This video was recorded on the Sapphire Pulse RX Vega 56. I'm a little over 24 hours into The Division 2 at the time of recording this video, and so far the game has done a great job of keeping me well and truly engaged in the never-ending grind for better loot. And there is no doubt that we are seeing a massive step up from the original game that was released back in 2016. But with the recent spate of new looter shooters hitting the market, combined with the older games now having many years of additional development time pumped into them, the question is, how does The Division 2 stack up in terms of design, progression, and the amount of content on offer? This is just one of the questions that I hope to be able to answer in this video. Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Pixel, and today on the Sapphire Tech YouTube channel I am going to be giving you guys my impressions of The Division 2 running at 1080p using optimized settings on the Sapphire Pulse RX Vega 56 graphics card. So let's get right to it. The Division 2 is set 7 months after the events that took place in New York City during the original game. The dollar flu virus has now spread to Washington DC, and with the collapse of essential services combined with a lack of law and order, the capital has been lost to many of the criminal factions that are all vying for control. It's your job as a Division agent to try and retake the capital, assist the remaining civilian settlements, and restore law and order. The story is awesome, and the setting is amazing. And then the narrative it's a little bit of a letdown. Echoes, which are these kind of small recreations of prior events, and the audio logs that you find scattered around the environments, and even the side missions, are what help develop both the story and the lore, and these work great. Also, through the environments, you are able to see how the events leading up until this point have left Washington DC scarred, and the more intimate environmental storytelling gives you a glimpse into the lives, and quite often deaths, of the people fighting to rebuild society. It really is great stuff. So it's such a shame that the player's personal story kinda just falls a little bit flat. This is something most certainly not helped by the fact that The Division 2 employs the silent protagonist trope, meaning that in the rare situations where you are treated to a cutscene, you just see your character stood there while NPCs speak at you rather than to you. This leaves you feeling kinda distant, and the lack of banter or conflict, at least relating directly to your agent, means that you never really end up developing any sort of meaningful relationships with anyone that you meet. Also, due to most of the missions being designed around the idea of multiple playthroughs, they lack any real impact when it comes to the story beats. I suppose in a way my complaints with the narrative only really exist because the potential is so obvious, though I can understand how the necessity for replayability, the freedom to approach missions in a less than ideal order, and the randomness of multiplayer could make developing a well-crafted narrative experience extremely difficult. I just think it could have been handled a little bit better. That said, The Division 2 is designed to be played for hundreds or even thousands of hours, so I suppose a campaign that can last a good 20 or so of them is really just a bonus. What's going to be really important then is going to be the gameplay, and for the most part The Division 2 hits that mark, providing that you like shooting things, that is. Like most games that follow the Ubisoft open world formula, The Division 2 gives off a great first impression and exposes you to seemingly limitless content. However, in reality, once you boil it down to the basics, it becomes very easy to see that most of the content follows the same roadmap. You have missions which normally require you to reach an area, at which point you will need to fight your way from A to B, while often having to shoot something to blow it up or kill an enemy or even activate a switch. The open world activities are also pretty simple. For instance, to capture a control point you need to kill all the enemies in an area, and then call in some allies with a flare, and then fight off a counterattack. Propaganda towers are radios that you need to activate, and once activated, an enemy will spawn in to try and stop you. On a rescue mission, you need to kill all the enemies in an area until one drops a key so you can free a hostage. I think you get the idea right. There is very little variation or freedom in how you approach pretty much anything in The Division 2. Everything is just an excuse to shoot more enemies, so hopefully shooting said enemies feels good. To be honest, I am not a fan of games that have bullet spongy enemies. Thankfully, while still pretty bullet spongy, the developers have done some really good work when it comes to hiding it for the most part. Most combat encounters now have a decent mix of strong enemies and weaker grunts that really help feed that bloodlust. Also, strong enemies are now strong because they are wearing armor, and each piece of armor can be broken, exposing weak spots that can be targeted, allowing you to take down even the biggest enemies in a timely fashion. Not only does this help with the overall time to kill, but it also makes the combat in general just so much more engaging than it was in the previous game. One aspect of the combat that struggles is the lack of freedom that you are given, not only when it comes to how to tackle an objective, but even down to which piece of cover you can likely fight behind. The Division 2 is not a difficult game, not even when you are playing solo. However, it can and will kill you extremely quickly if you ever so much as step out of line. This is mostly due to where the game spawns in its waves of enemies. These positions seem to be set in stone, and if you ever get too aggressive, there is a very good chance that a bunch of enemies will spawn right next to you and melt you instantly. This can obviously be incredibly frustrating, but as soon as you learn that, especially in missions, you want to sit back until the waves have all cleared out, things do start to get a lot easier. Now, as you have undoubtedly noticed, this video has been made from the perspective of a solo player. I did, however, manage to play some multiplayer, both with some real friends as well as just some randoms using the matchmaking, and it worked great, and like most games, playing with friends can make things a lot more fun. The reason I have not focused too heavily on the multiplayer in this video is because, put simply, at the point where I am in the game, it's kind of irrelevant, and you're just really competing for kills and steamrolling through the content if you do. I can imagine that having a group of friends playing together in the dark zones, which are the game's PvP areas, could be a lot of fun and fairly intense. Same thing with the endgame content. I've just not had the pleasure of trying that out for myself yet. Unfortunately, The Division 2 has not managed to solve the problem which is shared by pretty much all looter shooters, and that's the issue with pre-endgame loot being worthless, skill builds being pointless, and the amount of time spent faffing in menus being, let's just say, excessive. When it comes to your loot, you could spend a good 20 to 30 minutes going through everything that you have in order to min-max your stats and take advantages of all the bonuses that can be mixed together, and then as soon as you level up 20 or 30 minutes later, all your subsequent loot is going to be simply better than what you already have, and this means that min-maxing, crafting and modding end up being a huge time sink that is, well, just not worth the effort. Now, to be clear, I have not yet experienced the endgame for myself, but from what I have been hearing from others, it's actually pretty good. Once you hit the level cap, you get to choose a specialization, each with their own unique special weapon, and there is even a new enemy faction that is introduced into the world, which increases the difficulty as well as mixing things up in order to make previously played missions feel fresh again. Ubisoft are also promising lots of free DLC going forward, so the endgame is looking likely to keep expanding in future and getting bigger and bigger. But anyway, let's get on to the performance and the presentation. I have been playing The Division 2 on the Sapphire Pulse RX Vega 56 graphics card at 1080p while running with optimized settings that are on screen now. While I could have likely maxed out the graphics and still been able to maintain a healthy 60 frames per second, I personally prefer to be able to play my shooters where I need to aim with a mouse and keyboard at much higher frame rates. Using these settings, we are able to hold an average well above the 100 FPS mark, and the mouse feels responsive and the gameplay feels smooth. I estimate that I have boosted my frame rate by around 30 to 40% while maintaining the vast majority of the eye candy, so this is definitely a win-win in my books. On a side note, I'm actually going to look into making a video on the importance of optimizing your game settings in future, so be sure to keep an eye out for that. Visually, it has got to be the environments that steal the spotlight here. The streets of Washington DC are packed full of both detail and atmosphere, and from a technology perspective, The Division 2 is very accomplished. Shadows look detailed, the lighting is beautiful, and the destruction is impressive. Almost everything you can shoot can be broken, chipped, or destroyed to a level that I don't think I have ever seen in a video game before. One area where I do believe the visuals are a little lackluster has got to be the character models, or more precisely the characters' faces. While they are definitely not outright bad, they do lag behind the rest of the presentation by quite a firm margin. They look like they are made out of wax and they animate fairly oddly, and they just don't seem to reach the quality bar set by the rest of the game. Thankfully, you don't spend all that much time looking at people's faces, and there are not that many cutscenes in the whole game, so it's not really a massive issue by any means. It's just a shame considering that I feel the faces in the original game did actually look better. Anyway, I think that I have covered most of what I wanted to bring up, so allow me to just say this before I leave. If you did not like the original Division from 2016, I doubt that will change with the Division 2, mainly because all the improvements, and there are a lot of them, are more down to refinements rather than changes. The enemies are still bullet sponges, but with more weaker enemies thrown in as cannon fodder and the ability to break specific armor pieces, the game does a much better job at hiding it. The movement is still incredibly clunky, but at least it's been sped up a little bit. The game can still look incredibly stunning, and this time there is much more diversity in the places you will be visiting. Everything is just a little bit better. If you are looking for a game to play with friends, or simply a game that you can sink many hours into, then you could do a lot worse than The Division 2. I think Massive Entertainment and Ubisoft have really done a great job here, so yeah, I would have no issues with recommending the game to anyone that enjoyed the original game, enjoys looter shooters in general, or is looking for a game to play with friends. With all that said, that is going to be me done for today, so if you are new around here, please do consider slapping that subscribe button so you get notified of our future videos. Also, before you shoot off, how about checking out one of these videos? If you've got any recommendations or feedback, please do let me know in the comment section below this video. And finally, from myself and everyone here at the Sapphire Tech YouTube channel, thank you so much for watching. Have a great morning, noon, or night, and I hope to see you again very soon. So until next time, I will catch you later. Bye bye.